My name is Allison, and what I am about to share will change the way you see reality. On a seemingly ordinary day, my life took an unexpected turn that led me beyond the veil of this world. I experienced something so profound, so terrifying, and yet so beautiful that I can no longer remain silent. I died. For a brief moment, I left my body and crossed into a place that exists beyond time. There, I witnessed events unfolding that shook me to my core. Now, I must share what I saw, because the truth is, time is shorter than we think. The day started like any other. I woke up, stretched, and let out a long yawn as sunlight streamed through my window. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and I lazily made my way to the kitchen, unaware that within hours, my life would never be the same. I had a busy schedule ahead, errands, work calls, and a quick stop at my favorite bookstore. It felt like just another normal Friday. As I got ready, I glanced at my phone and saw a message from my best friend, reminding me about our dinner plans that night. If only I had known that I wouldn't make it. Around noon, I grabbed my keys and headed out. The weather was perfect. Blue skies, just the right amount of warmth, and a soft breeze. I remember thinking how peaceful everything seemed, but that peace wouldn't last. As I drove down the familiar roads of my town, I turned onto the main highway, humming along to my favorite song on the radio. That's when it happened. A truck, out of nowhere, ran a red light. I barely had time to react. The impact was violent. The sound of metal crushing against metal filled my ears. My head snapped forward and pain shot through my body. Then everything stopped. Silence. I felt myself slipping away. The chaos of the crash faded, replaced by an eerie calm. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My vision blurred, and a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of detachment. I realized with growing horror that I was no longer inside my body. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. One moment, I was in my car, the wreckage still around me, and the next, I was floating. I could see everything, my own body, limp and motionless, trapped in the twisted remains of my car. The truck driver had jumped out, his face pale with shock. Bystanders were gathering, dialing 911, but none of them could see me. I felt weightless, like I had been freed from everything holding me down. There was no pain, no panic, just a strange, peaceful awareness. Then I started moving. It wasn't like walking or flying, but more like being pulled by an unseen force. I wasn't in control, yet I wasn't afraid. A tunnel of light stretched before me. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It pulsed, like it was calling me forward. But on the edges of this tunnel, there were shadows. They moved, shifting and swirling like smoke, watching me. I could hear faint whispers, but I didn't understand the words. Something about them felt wrong. I turned my focus back to the light. As I moved deeper into it, the sounds of the world I had left behind faded completely. I could no longer hear the sirens or the voices of the people trying to save my body. The only thing that existed now was the journey ahead. Then, suddenly, I wasn't alone. As I traveled through the tunnel, I became aware of a presence. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, an overwhelming sense of power and knowledge. It wasn't human, and yet it felt familiar. The tunnel itself was breathtaking. The light wasn't like anything from Earth. It wasn't just illumination. It had depth, movement, and intention. But then there were the shadows. They clung to the edges, shifting, whispering. I could hear voices now, some pleading, others filled with rage. I realized with chilling certainty that these were souls, ones who hadn't made it to the light. A feeling of unease crept over me. The light was calling me forward, but the shadows, they wanted something too. They reached toward me, their whispers growing louder. "Turn back. You don't belong here yet." But I couldn't stop. The light was drawing me in, and despite the fear in my heart, I knew I had to keep going. Suddenly I felt a force pushing against me, not the light, but the darkness. It was as if something didn't want me to cross. The whispers turned into screams, and the tunnel shook. I was caught between two forces, one pulling me forward, the other trying to drag me back. I closed my eyes and braced myself. Then the darkness faded. The light exploded around me, and everything changed. When the darkness disappeared, I found myself standing in a place I can barely describe. It wasn't Earth, but it wasn't some fantasy heaven either. It was a space beyond reality, beyond time. And then I felt it. A presence, one so immense, so powerful that I was overwhelmed. It wasn't just light, it was knowledge. It knew me, every thought I had ever had, every secret I had ever kept. I wasn't just seen, I was understood. There were no words, yet it spoke, not with a voice, but with truth itself. You were not meant to see this yet, but you must understand what is coming. I trembled. I didn't know how to respond. Then images flooded my mind. Events unfolding on Earth. Wars, disasters, people turning away from God. And above it all, a great battle, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Angels and demons locked in combat, the sky splitting open as light clashed with darkness. I gasped. It wasn't just a vision. It was happening. And then the presence spoke again. Tell them, the time is short. As I stood in that place beyond time, everything I had ever done, every choice I had ever made, began to unfold before me. It wasn't just like watching a movie of my life. It was deeper, more personal, more raw. I felt everything. Every moment of kindness I had ever shown, I relived. Every word of encouragement, every prayer whispered in faith, it all returned to me in waves of warmth and light. But then I saw the other side. The careless words I had spoken in anger, the times I had ignored someone in need, the moments I had chosen selfishness over compassion. I didn't just see them, I felt them. I experienced the pain I had caused others, as if it were my own. I had never truly understood how much our actions affect those around us until that moment. I wanted to turn away, to stop watching, but I couldn't. It wasn't about punishment, it was about understanding. The presence before me, full of love and truth, wanted me to see. Every single thing I had done on earth had rippled through time, touching lives in ways I had never imagined. Then I saw something even more shocking. I saw the prayers I had prayed, some small, some desperate, some that I had forgotten about. But in this place, I could see what happened to them. Some prayers had created waves of light, influencing people and events in ways I had never known. Others, they had faded, weak and powerless because I had doubted when I prayed. I had no idea how real prayer was until I saw it from this perspective. And then the visions stopped. The presence surrounded me with peace, but I was shaken. I had spent my whole life thinking some things mattered more than others. But in the end, what mattered most was love. The love we show, the prayers we pray, the faith we live by. That was all that truly mattered. Before I could process what I had seen, the space around me shifted. The light dimmed, and suddenly I was no longer alone. In the distance, I saw them. Two forces clashed in a battle beyond human comprehension. One side burned with radiant light, their weapons glowing with divine fire. The other side, dark, twisted figures that seemed to absorb the light, fought with an unnatural rage. The sky split apart as these forces collided, sending ripples of energy across the expanse of eternity. I realized with absolute certainty that this was not just a metaphor. This was real. A war was happening beyond the physical world, a battle between forces of good and evil. I could feel the weight of it, the intensity, the purpose. The warriors of light, angels, though not like the gentle figures I had imagined, fought with strength that came from something beyond themselves. And then I saw something incredible. Among them were humans, not ordinary humans, but souls that had been redeemed, clothed in armor unlike anything on earth. They wielded weapons forged from faith itself, striking against the darkness with power I could hardly comprehend. The battle was not random, it had purpose. It was leading somewhere, and as I watched, I understood. This war was reaching its final stage. Something was coming, a great reckoning, and the world had no idea. I turned my gaze toward the warriors who stood in the midst of battle. These were not just spirits. They were those who had lived on earth, who had fought through trials, who had endured for their faith. I saw some of them lift their weapons, and with each strike, light erupted, pushing back the darkness. But they were not fighting alone. I saw how their strength came from something greater, something being poured into them from beyond the battlefield. And then I realized what it was. It was prayer. I watched as glowing streams of energy shot toward the warriors from different points on earth. Some were strong, filled with unwavering faith, while others flickered weakly. The warriors used these prayers as their strength, their shield, their fuel to continue the fight. And suddenly, I understood. Every sincere prayer uttered by a believer wasn't just heard, it was felt. It wasn't just a request, it was a weapon. The prayers of those on earth were directly affecting the war in the heavens. And those who prayed with true faith, those who never gave up, had the greatest impact. Then I noticed something else. Some warriors were struggling. They were being overwhelmed by the darkness, and when I looked closer, I saw why. The prayers that had once strengthened them had stopped. The people who once prayed for them had given up, had lost faith, had let doubt take over. Tears filled my eyes. I had never thought of prayer this way before. I had never realized how real, how crucial, how powerful it was. And yet so many people on earth had no idea. As I watched, a voice rang out. It wasn't a sound, but a presence that filled everything around me. It was him. Allison. The voice called my name, and instantly I knew who it was. Jesus. I turned, but I couldn't look at him directly. The radiance of his presence was overwhelming. Every fiber of my being wanted to fall to my knees, to worship, to weep, but I couldn't move. His voice carried weight, authority, love, and something else, urgency. "The time is short," he said. "Tell them, tell my people to prepare." I wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, but the words wouldn't come. He continued, his voice filled with both sorrow and determination. "They are distracted. They have forgotten the power they hold. They chase after the things of this world, while the enemy moves freely among them. They do not see what is coming." I felt my heart pound. I had to know. "What's coming?" I finally managed to whisper. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he showed me. The earth trembled. Darkness spread across nations. People were crying out in confusion and fear. I saw deception rise, words twisted, truth hidden, and many falling for the lies. The world was preparing for something, but not what they thought. They were preparing for a false peace, a false hope. But underneath, destruction loomed. Jesus turned to me. His eyes held sorrow but also resolve. They must wake up. They must return to me. The battle is not of flesh and blood, but of spirit. Those who seek the truth will find it, but those who follow the world will be lost. The weight of his words pressed into me. There was no time for hesitation. The warning was clear. The world was heading towards something it was not ready for. Then the vision faded, and I knew I had to go back. As Jesus spoke, the world around me shifted again, and I saw something I never expected. I had always thought of prayer as something quiet, something personal, words whispered into the air with hope that they reached God. But now I saw prayer for what it truly was. Before me, rivers of light stretched across the heavens, intertwining like threads in a vast, endless tapestry. Each strand pulsed with energy, flowing toward the warriors of light, empowering them in their fight. I saw some streams burning bright, strong, unwavering. Others flickered weakly, barely reaching their destination before fading. Jesus gestured toward them. "These are the prayers of my people," he said. "Some are filled with faith, others with doubt. Some are spoken in love, others in routine, but all of them matter." I watched as some prayers were immediately met with a response. Angels moving swiftly, carrying divine power to those in need. Others hung in the air, blocked by dark forces, tangled in webs of fear and disbelief. The enemy was working tirelessly to stop these prayers, to intercept them before they could reach their purpose. Then I saw something that crushed me. There were places where the light simply stopped, places where people had given up, where prayers had ceased. The enemy rejoiced in these places, filling them with more darkness. I turned to Jesus, my heart heavy. What happens to the prayers that don't make it? His face was full of sorrow. Many never reach their full strength because those who pray do not believe in their own words. Faith is the key that unlocks power. Without it, the prayer fades before it can move. The realization struck me deeply. I had prayed so many times, but how often had I truly believed? How often had I doubted the power of my own words? Then he looked at me, and his next words sent chills through my soul. "Tell them they must not stop. The time is coming when their prayers will be the difference between life and destruction." In an instant, the scene shifted again. I was no longer in the heavens, but standing above the earth, looking down. What I saw made my stomach drop. Nations were crumbling. Cities once filled with life and joy were covered in chaos. Riots, wars, famines. People wandered the streets, searching for hope, but finding none. Fear ruled. Darkness spread like a disease. Then, a figure emerged. He was charismatic, confident, and the world adored him. Wherever he walked, people praised him, desperate for his promises of peace and security. He spoke of unity, of a world free from suffering. But something was wrong. I felt the deception before I fully understood it. His words were smooth, his gestures perfect, but beneath the surface I saw something sinister. He wasn't offering salvation, he was leading them into a trap. The people didn't see it. They welcomed him, followed him, trusted him with their lives. And slowly, he changed the world. He dismantled faith, replaced prayer with false spirituality, and made worship of himself seem righteous. I gasped, turning to Jesus. "Who is he?" Jesus' expression was grave. "The world will call him a savior, but he is not. He is the great deceiver, and many will follow him blindly." I saw churches falling, believers being persecuted, the name of God being twisted and mocked. The world had chosen convenience over truth, and as they celebrated their false peace, the darkness beneath it grew stronger. "They do not see," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "They do not listen." I looked up and saw a great throne, so massive, so overwhelming, that even the heavens seemed to bow before it. A sound like thunder echoed through eternity, and I knew what I was witnessing: judgment. People stood before the throne, their faces filled with either joy or terror. Some were glowing, radiating light, their names being called one by one. As their names were spoken, their faces turned toward the presence seated on the throne, and they were welcomed. The light embraced them, and they disappeared into something greater than anything I could comprehend. But others, they stood in trembling silence. Their names were called, but the voice that spoke carried no warmth. They tried to defend themselves, to explain, but their own words failed them. They had chosen the world, denied the truth, and now the truth was undeniable. Then I saw the deceiver, the one who had led the world astray. He stood before the throne, and for the first time, the charm, the confidence, the illusion, it all faded. He screamed. I watched as darkness swallowed him along with those who had chosen his path. It wasn't anger or vengeance that cast them away. It was truth, the truth of their own choices, played out in full. Jesus turned to me. There is still time, but not much. Then I stood at the edge of something vast, so vast that I could barely comprehend it. I knew I had reached the moment where all souls made their final choice. This was the border between eternity and return. Jesus stood beside me, his eyes full of love and urgency. Alison, you have seen, you have witnessed what is to come, but now you must go back. My heart ached. I didn't want to return. The peace here, the presence of God, it was beyond anything I could explain. I didn't want to step back into the broken world, into fear, into suffering. But I don't know what to say, I whispered. Will they even believe me? His voice was gentle, yet filled with strength. That is not your burden to carry. Your task is to tell them, to warn them, the choice is theirs. I felt something shift, like a force pulling me backward. My vision blurred. The brilliant light around me dimmed. The voices of heaven faded, replaced by something else, something distant. And then, with a gasp, I woke up. Pain shot through my body. I was in a hospital, machines beeping around me, a doctor shouting that I had a pulse. I blinked, confused, my heart pounding. I was back. But I knew the truth now. The world had to hear what I had seen. The moment I re-entered my body, it was like being plunged into ice water. I gasped, my lungs burning as if I had been drowning. Pain crashed over me like a tidal wave. My ribs ached, my head throbbed, and every part of me felt broken. But none of it compared to the overwhelming shock of being back. The sterile lights of the hospital ceiling flickered above me, a stark contrast to the radiant light I had just left behind. I could hear frantic voices, doctors, nurses, someone crying. Machines beeped erratically, and I felt tubes and wires attached to me. "She's back," someone shouted. Tears streamed down my face, but not from the pain. It was grief, a deep, aching grief that came from the realization that I had been there. And now I was here. I wanted to scream, to ask why I had been brought back when I had just experienced something so beyond human comprehension. A doctor leaned over me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You were gone," he murmured, "clinically dead for several minutes." I didn't care. I barely heard him. My mind was still trapped between two worlds. Memories of the battle, the warnings, the deception, and the final judgment crashed into me all at once. I had seen the truth. I had stood in its presence. I had been given a mission, and now I had to figure out how to carry it. Days passed, but I wasn't the same. My body healed, but my mind remained restless. I couldn't shake what I had seen. The war, the prayers, the false peace, the deceiver, it was real, and the world was walking straight into it without realizing. At first, I hesitated. How could I possibly explain this to anyone? Would they even believe me? Would they think I had just imagined it all? But then I remembered Jesus' words. "Tell them, the time is short." That urgency weighed on me. I couldn't stay silent. Every day that passed felt like a missed opportunity to warn people, to wake them up. The world was distracted, chasing after temporary things, while the real battle, the eternal battle, was already unfolding. So I started speaking, first to my family, then to close friends. Some listened with wide eyes, moved by my words. Others dismissed it as a dream, a side effect of trauma. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't just my experience. The signs were already showing. The world was shifting. Chaos was spreading. People were being led away from God, convinced that truth was subjective, and the one coming to offer them peace wasn't who they thought he was. I wasn't meant to keep this to myself. I had been sent back for this, to sound the alarm before it was too late. So now, I ask you, are you paying attention? Are you watching the world around you? Can you see the deception unfolding, the distractions, the division, the way faith is being twisted and weakened? It's happening now, and soon the world will be given a choice many won't even realize they are making. Jesus is calling his people back to him, but many are asleep. They don't see what's coming. They don't realize how real this battle is. I saw the final moments before his return, the spiritual war raging behind the scenes, the enemy tightening his grip on the world, and I saw what happens to those who aren't prepared. I don't know when the final battle will reach its peak, but I know it's closer than we think, and I know this: when the deceiver arrives, he will not look like a monster. He will look like a savior. He will offer solutions. He will promise peace, and the world will love him for it. Don't be deceived. Stay awake. Strengthen your faith. Pray like it matters, because it does. Return to God before it's too late. This isn't about fear. It's about truth. And the truth is, the time is running out. I was sent back to warn you. The rest is up to you. Life after my experience hasn't been the same. How could it be? I walk through each day knowing things I never should have seen. I carry visions of a world that is changing faster than anyone realizes. I feel the weight of an unseen war that most people ignore. And yet, I'm still here, trapped in this reality while my soul longs for the one I left behind. The hardest part isn't remembering what I saw. The hardest part is knowing that most people don't believe me. I've shared my story, and for every person who listens, there are 10 who laugh it off. They say it was just my brain shutting down, a hallucination, a dream. But I know better. It was more real than anything I have ever experienced on earth. The hardest days are when I see the world moving exactly as Jesus warned me it would. I watch as people are led deeper into confusion, as truth becomes relative, as deception is accepted without question. I hear leaders speak words that sound righteous but carry no real faith. I see churches bending under pressure, afraid to stand for what is true. And I remember the deceiver. I remember his face, his voice, the way people adored him. He is coming. I don't know when, but I know the world is already preparing for him without even realizing it. And I see so many who will fall for his lies. It shakes me to my core. There are nights I wake up gasping for breath, feeling like I'm back in that place, watching the battle unfold, hearing the voices of the warriors, feeling the weight of the prayers. I can't unsee it. I can't unhear what Jesus told me. But I also remember the light, the power of faith. The warriors who stood strong because people on earth still prayed, still believed. That is what keeps me going. I wasn't sent back to live in fear. I was sent back to prepare, to remind people of the power they hold, to call them back to true faith before the final battle begins. And so, I keep speaking, I keep warning. Because even if just one person wakes up, even if just one soul returns to God because of what I've shared, then my return wasn't in vain. If you're still reading this, then this message is meant for you. You weren't led here by accident. I was sent back to warn you, and now the choice is yours. What I saw is coming. The world will change. The deception will spread. The battle will intensify. You will have to decide. Will you stand for truth, or will you follow the crowd? Because the deceiver will not come as a villain. He will come as a hero. He will bring peace, but it won't be real peace. He will promise unity, but it will be at the cost of faith. He will offer hope, but it will be an illusion. And most people will follow him without question. Jesus is calling you back now, not tomorrow, not when things get worse, not when you have more time. Now pray, strengthen your faith, return to Him before the choice is forced upon you. Because once the world accepts the deceiver, standing against him will come at a cost. I was shown the battle. I was given this warning. And now I have given it to you. What happens next is up to you. Since my return, I have begun to notice something strange, something I can't explain to those who haven't experienced it. It's as if the veil between this world and the next has been permanently altered for me. I see things now, not in a terrifying, ghostly way, but in a way that reminds me that we are constantly surrounded by a reality we do not understand. There are moments when I catch glimpses, brief flashes of something beyond the physical. Sometimes I'll be in a quiet place, praying, and I can feel the presence of angels around me. It's not a hallucination, it's not my imagination. It's a deep knowing, the same way you feel when someone is watching you, even if you can't see them. Other times, I sense the battle happening around us. In crowded places, I feel waves of spiritual tension, the pull of unseen forces vying for control. It's subtle, but it's there. The way some people seem lost, their eyes empty, their souls heavy with burdens they can't name. The way others glow, not physically but spiritually, carrying light that is unmistakable. Before my experience, I never would have noticed these things. Now I can't not see them. There are nights when I wake up, feeling as though I've just returned from somewhere else. My dreams, if you can even call them that, are vivid, detailed, more real than reality itself. Sometimes I relive what I saw in my near-death experience. Other times, I see things I don't fully understand, glimpses of events yet to unfold, warnings whispered into my spirit. The most unsettling part is how thin the barrier feels now. I used to think of death as a great, distant mystery, something that happened at the end of life, something unknowable until the moment arrived. But now I know better. The distance between life and eternity is barely a breath. It's right here, all around us, unseen but ever present. I don't know why God allowed me to remember all of this. Many people have near-death experiences and return with only fragmented memories. But I remember everything, every detail, every word spoken, every feeling I had. And because of that, I know that we are not alone in this world. The spiritual war is not something that happens far away. It is happening right here, in every home, every workplace, every heart. It moves in the choices we make, the prayers we pray, the doubts we entertain. I wasn't sent back just to share a warning. I was sent back to remind you that you are already part of the battle, whether you realize it or not. And the decisions you make every day, what you believe, what you stand for, how you pray, are shaping the outcome. I can see it. The question is, will you open your eyes before it's too late?